With that said, let's get to the list. And you know, when I get listy, I start listing things. And when I have a list, it's usually comprised of 7 items. And that's no different today. So the list for today and tonight's show: best wide receiver groups in the National Football League. And I told you this is the time of the year where we can start having these types of conversations. The draft is taking place. Free agency is taking place. There's still one more wave of free agency that may take place after June 1. If there are June 1 cuts, post June 1 cuts that come, we'll see. The June 1 deadline has really diminished in recent years. It doesn't really hold the same weight that it once did. But we'll see if anything comes about that June 1 deadline. However, for the most part, we know what these receiver groups are going to look like. These receiving cores, if you will. And I've comprised the list of my 7 best wide receiver cores in the National Football League. And if your list looks like this or it looks vastly different, I'd love to hear from you as to what your list of the best 7 wide receiver groups in the National Football League looks like. So let's get to the list. And we start with my number 7 wide receiver group. And it is the Los Angeles Rams. So they got essentially an overhaul this offseason, did the Rams. And, I think this overhaul kind of came with the acquisition of one Matthew Stafford. They looked at Stafford and they said, we got a guy that can distribute the football, that can push it vertically. We don't have any vertical threats currently on the roster, guys that really truly scare you and can get behind the defense. So they traded out, what was the name of the receiver that went to the Titans? I actually like him, but I don't love him, as I've already stated. Josh Reynolds. They traded out Josh Reynolds and essentially said, all right, we about to level up. They went and got Djax. Now, look, everybody knows at this point of his career, he may be only good for like 5 or 6 games. But in those 5 or 6 games, he is pretty damn deadly. And if he could just stay relatively healthy, they got themselves a bona fide stud. We'll see what happens there. But Tutu Atwell is the guy that I'm excited about with this Rams group. So let's go through their group real quick. Robert Woods, who, when they got him from Buffalo, I thought he was nothing more than a number 2, maybe a high-level 3, maybe a mid-level 2. That's what he felt like to me when he first got to L.A. But he's been everything and more for this Rams offense. He blocks in the run game. He runs the short intermediate routes. He's not a deep threat per se, but if you fall asleep behind the wheel like Washington did, he can get you for a 57-yard touchdown like he did Washington. So he does everything though. Jet sweeps. This guy had like 20 carries this past year off of jet sweeps and things of that nature. Robert Woods has really morphed into one of the more reliable receivers in all of the NFL. So he's a really good receiver. Cooper Kupp is the best part of waking up. The Rams, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's really morphed into another one of these guys that when he's healthy, he's a true difference maker at the wide receiver position. Their offense looks so different when he's not healthy. Remember how well he played in the playoff game against the Seahawks. He gets injured, doesn't really have the same impact against the Packers the following week. So that offense looked a lot less. And look, I get it. They had a quarterback that was compromised in the playoffs, but Cooper Kupp was the one guy that could make plays for them in the playoffs, and he got injured. It just changes their offense drastically. So it's Robert Woods, it's Cooper Kupp, it's Deshaun Jackson, it's Van Jefferson, a young guy going into the second year of his career out of Florida that I really liked in the 2020 draft. And I think he's going to continue to grow and blossom. And with Matthew Stafford back there, who's not afraid to distribute the football to each and every single one of these guys, I think Van Jefferson is going to be a much bigger part of the offense this year. And then Tutu Atwell, as I just mentioned, the receiver that they drafted in the second round out of Louisville, who to me is a poor man's Kadarius Toney in this year's draft. If Kadarius Toney is hefty in terms of a garbage bag, then Tutu Atwell is the great value brand. Still going to fit around your trash can. You're going to be able to put items in. He's going to be able to get the job done. We'll see just how well he's able to do that for the Rams, but it just gives them another speed threat vertically. And they knew that Deshaun Jackson wasn't a guy that they could rely on for 16 games or 17 now. And so they got themselves an insurance policy in Tutu Atwell that will fill that void should Deshaun Jackson get injured. But if he's able to stay healthy, now they got two guys that can stretch the football field vertically. I like this Rams group. It's well-rounded. You got a big target in Kupp. You got some guys that can do the dirty work underneath in Van Jefferson and Robert Woods. And then you got a couple of vertical field stretchers in Deshaun Jackson and Tutu Atwell. I think that's a well-rounded group. And with Matthew Stafford delivering the football, I think they have a chance to be one of the better groups in the NFC. Coming in at number 6 on the list, the Arizona Cardinals. So we're staying in the NFC West. This is a group that I think they're going to lose Larry Fitzgerald. He has not announced his retirement yet. I think he's still mulling over the decision. I think most people, however, believe he's going to hang it up, but he has not formally made that announcement yet. But everybody, including myself, is going about business as if he's not going to be on the roster next year. That said, they replaced one aging veteran with another, but one that's a lot younger. So they say, all right, if Larry's going to go, then we need a veteran in his place. So it's AJ Green steps in, and it's no drop-off. As a matter of fact, there may be an uptick in production in what you get out of AJ Green. Now, it was not a very flattering 2020 season for AJ Green, but you got to remember, first year back after pretty much missing like a year and a half of ball. He hasn't really played ball for real in what feels like 2 seasons. So last year was just him getting his legs back and getting reacclimated to playing ball. And I think you're going to see a much better, sharper, crisper AJ Green in 2021. And he'll be a great compliment to DeAndre Hopkins. And I think there's a nice little group of receivers here. If they can get what they need out of AJ Green, the rest of these guys will be allowed to be complementary pieces. So their group looks like this: DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, who I really like. Think he's a perfect third option in that offense. If he's got to be a faux number 2, that's when things start to go sideways for that offense. If he's allowed to be their third option, they're dangerous. Andy Isabella is a guy that I think has the ability to stretch the football field vertically. I think he has a chance to really fill that Scotty Miller role in Arizona and be a bigger part of their offense, sort of the way Miller was, a big, deep threat that could stretch the football field and make big plays. I think Isabella has a chance to really do that in year number 3 in Arizona. And then they drafted Rondale Moore, the Swiss Army knife receiver out of Purdue, who can do a little bit of everything, has had issues staying healthy, but if he's healthy, he adds another dynamic weapon to what is already a very, very explosive offense. And so Rondale Moore is another wild card. Don't really know what they're going to get out of him, but it makes Kyler Murray's life a lot easier if you can just throw it to a guy at the line of scrimmage, get a couple of blocks, and he can do the rest. So Rondale Moore with a sub 4.4 speed is a guy that just adds some more vertical juice to this Cardinals offense. They check in at number 6 on the list. Checking in at number 5 on the list are the New York Football Giants, the G-Men. Talked about Dave Gettleman and all of the moves made this offseason to really fortify that wide receiving group. Well, I don't think it's any doubt that the Giants have one of the better groups on paper, that is. We'll see how they're able to perform, and I've said this a bunch of times this offseason. I'm going to continue to say it because I just like saying it. The Giants got guns and shit. Is the safety on? Do they know how to use them? We're going to find out. And that's where Daniel Jones comes into play. But man, oh man, do they have some heavy artillery now in the Big Apple or New Jersey, which I'll never understand that. But still, Kenny Golladay, their big prized free agent acquisition, comes in and right away is a true number one, something they've lacked with this Giants team since they traded. Shame on you if you step to the old dirty Beckham, ODB. So Golladay steps in and immediately is the number one guy, and that's what they've lacked. They haven't had a true number one since they traded Beckham. So now they do. Darius Slayton, to me, tried to be a number one. That's not who he is. He's a number two in this league, and I think he has a chance to be a damn good one. We saw a massive downtick in production from him last season, and he dealt with some injuries as well, but that was because he was trying to be something that he's not. He was trying to fill a void. See, when you come in as a rookie, nobody's expecting anything from you, so he was able to come in loosey-goosey and just play ball. In year two, everybody was, oh, okay, so you the guy that's trying to be the Giants number one. I'm going to lock your ass. Lock him up. Lock him up. So corners were locking his ass up, and he was having some issues. Well, now the number two corner is going to be assigned to Darius Slayton. And if you get the number two on Slayton, I think he could have a field day. So I think he is now where he's supposed to be, properly slotted as a number two. Sterling Shepard, if he's healthy, he's a problem. That's his biggest issue. He can't stay healthy. When he's healthy, he's a problem, and he's a number three in this league. He was posing as a number two last year. That's not who he is. I think in this third wide receiver role, he is going to flourish, and that's where he truly belongs. And if I'm not mistaken, in his rookie season, when the Giants went like 11-5, and that was the whole boat trip, I think he was the third option that year, if I'm not mistaken. You know, I could be wrong. He might have been the option too, but that's when he's at his best. Third option. I think he's going to be phenomenal this year with all the weapons around him. Kadarius Toney. Don't really know where he fits in this equation, but man, is it a luxury to have that kind of speed and dynamic playmaking ability on your football team and really not know how he fits in. If he's a 1 or 2 or 3, you don't know what he is right now. You just say he's a playmaker. And I got a bunch of playmakers, and I'm adding another one to the mix. And one of the biggest problems for the Giants last year was they didn't have any vertical speed. Once the injury to Darius Slayton took place, and he was hobbling around on the field, nobody respected the Giants' ability to get vertical and take the top off the defense. You could play them, 15, 20 yards and in, because you didn't really – who was going to get behind you? Austin Mack? You weren't afraid of any of these guys that they had on their roster. So – you were able to be over-aggressive and do some things to really make them uncomfortable. Now, with the addition of Golladay, who may not be a speed demon, but can go up and get the 50-50 ball if you give him an opportunity one-on-one down the field, or Darius Slayton, who can run, and now Kadarius Toney, you got some problems on your hand. Not to mention John Ross, who is just a throw-in. He's a throwaway in this whole ordeal. Giants fans don't even know if he's going to make the football team. I contend that he will. But he's just another guy that can add an abundance of speed to the field that they lacked over the last 2 or 3 seasons. This is a big pickup to me because it's a low-cost, a low-risk, high-reward proposition. If he doesn't work out, okay, fine. You only spent $2.5 million. If he does work out, damn, you only spent $2.5 million. So either way, it's a good move for the Giants. They got a bunch of speed now, man. And again, they got size in Golladay. They got a good combination of size and speed in Slayton. You got Shepard working the slot as a slot machine that can win instantly. And then you got 2 more speed demons in Toney and Ross, not to mention Kadarius Toney is still developing as a receiver. You can just get it to him in space. He's got tremendous contact balance. He can make things happen. The Giants are loaded, man. They got guns and shit. I don't know if they know how to use them or not, but man, they got a ton of weapons. We'll see if Daniel Jones is afraid to pull the trigger or not, or if he's willing to empty the clip with all the weapons that they have at his disposal in 2021. They're the 5th team on my list of best wide receiver groups. Checking in at number 4 on the list are the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a group that I just think they beat you up with depth. They just can go 4 deep, and there aren't many teams in the league that can go 4 deep at the receiver position and feel really good about the 4th receiver down the list. Juju Smith-Schuster coming back is huge for them, even though this could be his final year in Pittsburgh. Whatever the case may be, he's shown the ability to be a 1,000-yard receiver consistently in this league, or hovering right around it. Deontay Johnson had a rough go of it last year with drops, but this guy's dynamic. His ability to win one-on-one matchups, to uncover and get vertical, makes this guy a threat every single snap on the football field, and I think he's only going to get better. So I think Deontay Johnson is a big-time playmaker in the making for this Steelers offense. Chase Claypool showed you his big play ability last year. I mean, honestly, his middle name was Big Play. Chase Big Play Claypool. I mean, every week you looked up, it was another 80-yard catch, a 57-yard bomb down the sideline. If it wasn't a big play, it was a touchdown. He on a jet sweep, on something near the end zone, they handed it to him on a little toss or something, and he would find his way into the end zone. He was a playmaker for them. He's established himself as a baller for that offense. And so you feel good about him. And then they still got James Washington, who doesn't get a lot of pub, doesn't get a lot of attention. And you know, because of all the other guys that they haven't. Look, James Washington, the knock on him coming out of Oklahoma State was he's shaped like a running back. He looks like a running back. He's built like a running back. He plays like a running back, even though he's a wide receiver. But all that means is that he's just physical as hell. When he gets the football in his hands, he's a ton to deal with. I just like James Washington. And so he's the 4th option on the team. And then they still got Ray McCloud, who's a gadget guy. You know, get it to him in space. He's the jet sweep guy. He's the guy that they try to get it to in some tricky situations. And he can make big plays, throw a wide receiver screen to him, get a couple blockers out in front, and Ray McCloud can do the rest. So I like the Steelers' core group of wide receivers. They're deep. I think with the Claypool's addition last year, it gave them that extra added speed that they needed, that touch they needed, because Deontay Johnson can run. Now Claypool and Ray McCloud kind of form that triumvirate of receivers that can run for them. Meanwhile, James Washington and Juju Smith-Schuster can do the dirty work underneath. So I think that's a well-rounded group of receivers in Pittsburgh to get the football to, and that's why Roethlisberger has been so successful over the last couple of years. You get to the 3rd team on the list, and it's the Buffalo Bills. And nobody, and I mean nobody, circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, whatever the hell that means. This group right here may be the deepest in football. I think that some of their young guys have to perform at a higher level in order for them to move up this list. However, Stephon Diggs by himself is good enough to get him in the top 3. I mean, he was so awesome last year, and he was the best receiver in all of football last year. You know, the NFL leader in yards, I believe. He might have been the NFL leader in receptions. I don't think he was a triple crowner, though. I don't think he led the league in receiving touchdowns, and that's what stopped him from getting the triple crown, if I'm not mistaken. But I think he had the lead in yards and receptions. He was phenomenal. I mean, Josh Allen's ascension can be directly correlated to the arrival of Stephon Diggs. Now, Allen, I thought, was going to do this anyway, but not at such a rapid pace that saw him be in the MVP discussion last year. And I think the reason that he was able to make such a great ascension was because of the addition of Stephon Diggs. So Diggs, and E-Man Sand is the newest acquisition. I wasn't impressed with him in New Orleans last year. He had his moments, but I was expecting a lot more from him in New Orleans last year, and I simply didn't get it. So I need him to prove to me that he's not running out of gas at this point of his career. He's getting up there in age. He's on his, 3rd or 4th team in 3 years. What was he? A Bronco, a 49er, a Saint, and now a Bill in less than 3 years' time. So he's got to show me in 2021 that this isn't it. But if he can get back to that, he's still a problem, is E-Man saying. Cole Beasley has proven that the Cowboys made a mistake when they cut him loose. He's a 1,000-yard receiver. He's a slot machine. He's a winner. There's a lot to love with Cole Beasley. Love him. Gabe Davis showed me a lot in his rookie campaign last year out of UCF. Thought he came on like game busters, made some big plays for them, and he's only going to get better. I'm really impressed with him. Isaiah McKenzie also showed me some things last year. I'd put him in a box as just a special teams guy, but he caught some passes, made some plays offensively. He's another one of these guys you can get it to on a jet sweep, or you can get it to on a wide receiver screen, or just get it in his hands quickly. But he can also stretch the football field vertically. With all the weapons that they have, you can easily fall asleep behind the wheel, and Isaiah McKenzie can get up the seam, and you won't catch him if he does. So really like what he brings to the table. And then they got a couple of guys that you don't count in that group. But, you know, Isaiah Hodgins was a guy I absolutely loved out of Oregon State in the draft in 2020. And he really was a non-factor last year for the Bills. So I'm anxious to see what comes of him in year two in Buffalo, if he can make the squad and make an impact. And then Jake Kumerow, the famous Jake Kumerow that Aaron Rodgers was pissed about them not retaining, is in Buffalo. And I used to make fun of Jake Kumerow all the time and say, who's Aaron Rodgers going to throw the football to? Who? Jake Kumerow? But actually, Jake Kumerow can ball. He's not trash. So just another guy in the mix in Buffalo. They're deep, man. They're deep. I just named 7 receivers in Buffalo, and 4 of those dudes are legit ballers if they're on their game and healthy. So the Bills are my number 3 team on the list. Checking in at number 2 are the Miami Dolphins? What? Yeah, the Miami Dolphins are number 2 on my list of the most dynamic and best wide receiving cores in all of the National Football League. How did they get there? Just pure depth, speed, and upside is what got them here. So you start with Devontae Parker, who, when he's healthy, he's a problem. A 1,000-yard receiver in his own right, and he's really starting to come into his own. I really like Devontae Parker. I think he's one of the more slept-on wide receivers because the Dolphins haven't had the best quarterback play, or they haven't been the best team, and so he's a guy you can sleep on very easily. But Devontae Parker has really carved out a niche for himself as a bottom-of-the-barrel number 1, but a high-end 2, okay? And I think that was all the more reason why it was important to go get a Jalen Waddle and a Will Fuller the 5th in free agency, and a Jalen Waddle in the draft, because one of those guys is going to emerge for you. And I think Waddle is the guy they're counting on to become their number 1 wide receiver, or a 1A or a 1B to Devontae Parker's 1A, whatever the case may be. Fuller is your quintessential deep threat. I've said this already. After Tyreek Hill and Deshaun Jackson when he's healthy, Will Fuller the 5th is the next best deep threat in the league. And really, with Deshaun Jackson's injury concerns, I think Will Fuller is the second best deep threat after Tyreek Hill in the league. This guy is so explosive. He's so dynamic. And when he wins big. He tracks the football extremely well. There were early concerns with drops in his career early on. Those have subsided. He's a guy that makes plays down the field in big fashion. I remember Thanksgiving, I think it might have been the last game he played in last year against Detroit, where he just tore him a new asshole, deep ball after deep ball. This guy is legit, and I think that's a great acquisition for the Dolphins. He'll miss the first game of the season due to a suspension, but after that, having Parker, Waddle, and Fuller, you might not be able to find a more dynamic trio of receivers than that right there, with the speed that Waddle and Fuller bring to the table, and then Parker being a guy that himself can run a little bit, but is more of your bigger possession receiver that can work the middle of the football field. Not to mention they got a stud tight end that is really starting to come into his own, that's going to take up some attention too. So then you go to more speed and Jakeem Grant. I mean, the speed just doesn't stop. They keep coming with the hits. Will Fuller's a speed demon. Jalen Waddle's a speed demon. Jakeem Grant's a speed demon. And so he can work the football field as well, get open. He's gotten better as a route runner since coming into the league out of Texas Tech. Preston Williams is another big-bodied guy. He's got to stay healthy as well. But when he's healthy, He has the ability to be a phenomenal possession receiver, boxing out defensive backs, and really making it hard with his 6'5", 220-pound frame. He's a tough guy to deal with. He's just got to stay healthy. And then they're getting Albert Wilson back from COVID-19. He decided to opt out. And he's a guy that they got from the Chiefs that they really like. I really like Albert Wilson. He's a slot machine, a guy that wins inside, does a lot of the little things that is very inviting to the quarterback over the middle of the football field. And then another guy in the mix is Allen Hurns, who you really don't know what you're getting, don't even know if he's going to make the team, but it's nice to have Allen Hurns as like a 6th, 7th option on your football club, which the Dolphins lay claim to right now. It's just a really dynamic group of receivers. You got 2,000-yarders in Parker and Fuller. You got Waddle, who looks like he's the next coming of Tyreek Hill. Jakeem Grant, who's just a nuisance player that can hurt you at every single level. Preston Williams has a chance to be a big-time possession wide receiver. Albert Wilson works the slot as good as any in the league when he's healthy and available. And Allen Hurns is a guy that when he's your 7th receiver on your football team, you feel really damn good. So I got the Dolphins at number 2, man. I just like what they're doing right now. And then finally, number 1 on the list are the Super Bowl defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what are you going to do? I mean, they got 3 dudes that at some point in their careers were 1,000-yard receivers. They got a vertical threat in Scotty Miller stretching the football field. And then they got Tyler Johnson as a 5th or 6th round pick out of Minnesota coming in and doing dudes. So, I mean, they go 5 deep, and then they throw in Justin Watson when one of these guys can't go and Justin Watson steps in. He's even serviceable. So, Mike Evans, Mikey, first receiver in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken, to begin their career with, I think it's now 7 straight 1,000. It might be 6. I can't remember what. I think Mike Evans was the 2014 draft, because that was the year with Beckham and Evans and Benjamin and all those guys that came in. I think. Don't get me mistaken. That could be 13 that Beckham was in. I know 14 was a hell of a draft. I want to say Beckham was in 14, but it's a bunch of 1,000-yard receivers that year. I think Evans was one of them. So if he was in 14, so 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 7 straight years of 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. I think he's the only receiver in NFL history to accomplish that feat. Don't get me lying. There could be 1 or 2 other guys that are in that club with him, but it's a very, very elite group of receivers. It's a very limited club, and Evans is, I don't think he gets enough respect. When we talk about the best receivers in football, we usually talk about Julio and Mike Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins, and we run off 5 or 6, Tyreek Hill, and nobody ever mentions Mike Evans. I don't think he gets the respect that he deserves, but man, is he good. He's a hell of a football player. Chris Godwin has emerged over the last couple of years as one of the better number 2 Robin receivers in the league. If Mike Evans is Batman, you'll be hard-pressed to find a better Robin than Chris Godwin in the league. He had some issues with some drops last year, and some injury concerns, but when he's healthy, I tell you what, man, he's a hell of a number 2. My goodness. Antonio Brown, we know what he is. He's a number 1 when his head is screwed on straight. He was one of the most prolific wide receivers over the last decade. But, you know, issues off the field and things like that in his mental state have come into question, and it's affected his play a bit. But when he's right, he's still a problem. And he was a great addition to this football team. Really made them whole as a receiving core last year. And I think it was his addition that really put him over the top last year at the receiver position. Scotty Miller, we all saw what this guy was capable of last year in the regular season, whether it was the Raiders game or it was the Panthers game, or I think most people remember the Packers game right before halftime. This guy was dynamic, in a vertical threat that could stretch the football field, get behind, and it doesn't take much. And Brady did a great job of putting it on the money, but Scotty Miller can work the slot. He can get vertical. He can do a lot of things, man. Scotty Miller is a problem. And then Tyler Johnson, is a guy that I looked at as a guy that I didn't necessarily love out of Minnesota, but I said he's going to be a good receiver. I just don't think he's a number one. He was a number one guy at Minnesota. I didn't think he was a one. Well, the Buccaneers drafted him, and they said, hey, you don't have to be a 1, 2, or 3, bro. You like a fourth option on the team, fifth option. Perfect. I like my Tyler Johnson as a fourth, fifth option, and he looks like he's going to relish in that role. And man, was he good in his rookie season. Arguably the biggest play of the Buccaneers season he was involved in that pass interference against Kevin King to seal the deal against the Packers. Tyler Johnson made a hell of a catch against the Saints, which I thought was a big play in that game as well. He had some big plays for this Buccaneers offense. I don't think you'll find a better receiver group top to bottom than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They give you 1,000-yarders. They give you speed. They give you diverse receivers that can work every level of the field. They give you touchdown machines. They give you guys that are young that are coming in and just picking up whatever table scraps are left. They're my number one team in the league at the wide receiver position. So let me quickly go over the list of the best wide receiver groups in all of football. Checking in at number 7, Los Angeles Rams, headed by Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Deshaun Jackson. Coming in at number 6, the Arizona Cardinals, headed up by DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Christian Kirk. Number 5, the New York Football Giants, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, and now Kadarius Toney. Number 4 are the Pittsburgh Steelers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and James Washington. Coming in at number 3, the Buffalo Bills, Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, all make that group dynamic. Number 2 are the Miami Dolphins, Devontae Parker, Will Fuller V, Jalen Waddle, Jakeem Grant, Preston Williams, Albert Wilson. That is a very talented group of wide receivers that all bring something different to the table. And then the number 1 wide receiving core in all of football are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson. I don't think you find a better, more consistent and dynamic group than the one the Buccaneers are capable of putting on the field from week to week. There were a couple of teams that just missed out on this list. The Cincinnati Bengals were a team that I mulled over. The Dallas Cowboys were another team that I mulled over. But those guys, those teams just didn't have enough. The Vikings were another team I considered, but there just wasn't enough depth there after you get past their top 2 receivers, even though I love Amir Smith-Marset, who they drafted in the draft this year out of Iowa. Just isn't enough depth for the Minnesota Vikings. Same for the Dallas Cowboys. They got 3 bona fide studs at receiver and then nothing else. And in this group, when you look at what I put together, these teams are going 5, 6, sometimes 7 deep at the receiver position. With Dallas, they got 3 guys that scare you, but they don't have a 4th or 5th option or anybody else that you worry about. If any of those guys in that top 3 core group get injured, there isn't anybody else that scares you now. They went out, and I'll tell you right now, they spent a lot of free agent dollars on undrafted guys that they brought in, and they're looking to find a diamond in the rough. And there are at least 2 or 3 guys that I'm looking at that they brought in as undrafted rookies, and I'm saying 1 or 2 of those dudes are going to hit. They're going to pop on 1 or 2 of those dudes, including Brandon Smith out of Iowa, or Nathan Vasher out of Texas Tech, who's a 6'6", 210-pound receiver out of Texas Tech. They're going to hit on one of those undrafted guys. They got like 15 of them. So they're planning on hitting on, and they know that they're not going to be able to afford all three of those guys. They just paid Amari Cooper money. They don't have to worry about CeeDee Lamb right now. He's going into the second year of his career, but they know this is the last year they're going to have Michael Gallup. So they're not going to pay him. He's going to be allowed to hit free agency. And more likely than not, they're hoping that one of these young boys shows them something enough so that they can allow him to walk. Because they can't pay everybody. Like they allowed Byron Jones to move on in free agency last year. They're probably going to have to do the same thing here next year when it comes to Michael Gallup. They're going to have to either draft another guy or hope one of these young boys that they have signed as undrafted rookie free agents come in and give them something. So anyway, I digress.
LouieTeeNetwork.